Sean has been on the TV more than Jake at State Farm at this point. I've heard what he wants, but I've never heard him say once why he believes the UAW can be the competitive advantage to Ford. The UAW is asking for substantially more pay than other auto workers. Okay, fine. But part of the discussion has to be how we work together to improve quality, reduce waste, lower absenteeism, and have greater flexibility. We need to have shared beliefs in a lean and respectful culture on our plant floor.
Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So first up today, we have a Reddit user that took some photos at a supercharger in San Clemente, of Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis apparently doing a photo shoot at the supercharger. Given the fact that Hyundai and Kia are still holdouts for adopting the NACS, maybe this is a development. If you're thinking, well, maybe this is just an owner meetup of sorts, in the comments, the original poster did say he or she talked to the employees and they said they work for Hyundai, plus the Hyundai headquarters is only about 20 minutes north of this location. Also, this is an EV9 which isn't even available yet, so seems like it's official employees. Side note, I just have to say it, I really like the look of this EV9. This would be a bit more significant because you may recall that Hyundai's Ioniq 5 was the first vehicle using an 800 volt architecture on their new eGMP platform. And then the Ioniq 6 has this multi-ultra fast charging 400 volt or 800 volt. As they say on their website, you can charge with either of those without having to adjust anything manually. Still, plenty of questions when it comes to how this will all work: V3, V4, 400 volt, 800 volt capabilities, onboard converters, and the like. But an announcement may be coming. We have a shockingly reasonable Tesla stock update from Canaccord Genuity, kind of along the lines of what I would say ahead of the delivery numbers for Monday. Don't get too hung up on the delivery number. It's less relevant this quarter. We're also still waiting for Cybertruck to hit the streets, possibly a fourth quarter 23 event. So much of the quarter over quarter decline expected this quarter is due to new product introductions, both of which are expected to impact the fourth quarter of this year, which, as I've said before, should be setting up for an awesome quarter. A lot of those Model 3 Plus vehicles that were not able to be delivered in China were for export that may not deliver in Q3. The new products appear to have strong underlying demand, not to mention the UAW strike with positive implications, new gigacast technology that could help margins, and an Optimus robot that appears to be coming alive. Our message is stay focused on the medium to long term, ignore potential downside volatility in the Q3 delivery number. A lot of good stuff happening at Tesla. We have Esther reporting the first 100% V4 supercharger location is now live in Italy with 8 stalls. A quick one from Motor Trader talking about eBay Motors and their selling data for September. The fastest selling used car, the Tesla Model 3, averaging 17 days in stock. Second place, Audi e-tron 20 days, and the Mustang 21 days. Just in case you're in the market, Sawyer was reporting that in select areas, Tesla decreased the price of solar panel and Powerwall package by around 3.5%. Alexandra put together a great presentation talking about why the Chinese dominance is here to stay and the global market is going to be impacted, and why Tesla continuing to lower the prices, focusing on affordability, is so key to remaining relevant.
Light vehicle sales for the last 22 years. As you can see on the bottom, India has been picking up the last 2 years, brings up this whole discussion, should Tesla go to India? Does India have light vehicle sales? It is picking up. Japan is slightly decreasing. Europe is clearly decreasing. That's the Europe of the 29 nations. The United States had the bump in the middle of the financial crisis, but is also going down again. And obviously the red line is China. China being the winner. So it's both the winner internally in China and exporting, which is their main advantage, which is the price gap. And I mean, I know that not all cars can be compared, but when you see these numbers, it is crazy. So they compared here the price in local currency of a car in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Mexico, in Australia, Indonesia, South Africa, Israel, Chile, Turkey, the UK, Norway, and India, and at what price a comparable Chinese car started there. In Vietnam, it was 80% less expensive. In Thailand, it was 71% less expensive.
Wow.
So when you see these numbers, and they're still profitable at these levels, you know what's coming. And I mean, that's why I say, what the heck about GM and Ford? Because when this happens in or outside of the US, we're getting to that in a second, there is nobody else than Tesla that can withstand this wave. There's just nothing that compares to this graph.
I would push back a bit on the Chinese profitability. It appears as though BYD may have turned the corner to actual profitability in the event you take away the Chinese subsidies. But as far as I can tell, for other competitors like NIO and some of the other domestic Chinese automakers, I'm not sure that they are yet profitable without subsidies. And this slide paints the picture very well. So we have EVs driving up Chinese auto exports. We have annual figures, and then this is for the first half of this year. The blue is going to be the EV battery share. So it's shaping up to be 2021, 22, and 2023 with significant growth year to year and growth of EV exports. And when you take a look at the growth of Chinese car brands' market share in different markets, looking at Italy specifically, in 2021 it was 0.75%. Fast forward just 2 years and now it's over 4%. And we have similar figures in the UK, in Spain, and Turkey. The big question remains if and when these Chinese brands enter these markets, the United States, Canada, Korea, Japan. What is going to happen? And I really liked what Alexandra said about it's not really so much about GM and Ford. I think as Americans, we tend to focus on that a lot. But from a global perspective, it's really a lot more about the Chinese and what they're doing, because over the next 5 to 10 years, those market share numbers will most likely only continue to grow quickly. Sometimes it really is the small things and attention to detail that can make a world of difference. Zach shared this video of the keypad appearing in slightly different places on the Tesla screen, so the fingerprints when you tap in your code does not seem obvious. This article from the Telegram really highlighted some of the challenges with the public supercharging market right now. What we have here is a station with EVgo chargers that ultimately failed. They said responsibility for maintenance appeared to play a role in the failed EVgo chargers. The company said it wanted to upgrade the chargers but could not because it needed permission from the state transportation officials. The state actually owned the equipment. This is a location with EV chargers and the infrastructure already set up. Now we have Guardian signing a $341,000 contract with the state transportation department to supply the chargers. Once the work starts, it should take up to 8 weeks for installation. And if you remove that aspect of actually connecting to the grid, which can typically be the longest, Tesla can actually install a supercharger site in around 1 week. Just a reminder that when you have the state involved and multiple third parties, it really bogs down the entire process. People lose sight of who's responsible for simple things like maintenance and upgrades, whereas when you have Tesla owning and operating its supercharger locations, it's much, much easier. From the New York Times, Quebec is putting up a significant amount of money trying to match the United States with the Inflation Reduction Act, and they were successful this time around for a new battery factory with Northvolt. Northvolt will invest $5 billion in the factory, which will employ as many as 3,000 people and be among the largest battery plants in North America when it starts production in 2026. This factory in Quebec will be Northvolt's first outside of Europe, and it marks the largest private investment in the Canadian province's history. Capacity set to be 60 gigawatt hours with adjacent facilities for cathode active material manufacturing and battery recycling. Construction on the building is expected to begin by the end of this year. The company also plans to house its North American headquarters in Montreal. Northvolt currently makes and distributes its batteries from Sweden, and of course they did say that the Inflation Reduction Act influenced their decision to set up shop there. They're saying this site will occupy an area equivalent to 318 football fields. Canada and Quebec have committed to providing Northvolt with production support to match the IRA's Advanced Manufacturing Production Credit in the US, $35 per kilowatt hour. They did say though the operating support provided will only be available for as long as the US IRA incentives remain in effect. When it comes to the specific batteries they'll be making here, everything I'm finding is very vague, just talking about a variety of components and materials. but they did mention NMC chemistry lithium-ion cells from recycling. Fun fact, Northvolt was actually founded by a former Tesla vice president, Peter Carlson. This was an interesting one. We have the Alliance for Automotive Innovation reaching out to NHTSA saying that their proposed regulation for fuel standards are going to hinder the transition to electric vehicles, basically by distracting automakers, saying they're going to have to focus too much on ICE vehicles to actually make any progress with EVs. A rep from the Alliance said NHTSA's regulations mark an unprecedented rate of change, which call for fuel efficiency to increase 8% per year for cars and light trucks for 24 and 25 model years and 10% in 2026, saying NHTSA's proposal exceeds maximum feasibility and it could make it difficult for automakers to balance efficiency improvements to ICE vehicles with investments in EVs. Another way to put it, it would distract manufacturers' attention and resources from the EV transition. The number of non-compliant vehicles and manufacturers projected exceeds reason and simply put will increase costs to the American consumer with absolutely no environmental or fuel savings benefits. Naturally, there's some pushback from environmental groups, and one representative said the agency, NHTSA, should be looking at the limits of possibility rather than the limits of automaker ambition. Of all of the concerns out there that the Alliance could have when it comes to OEMs effectively transitioning to EVs, I personally did not have the fuel requirements being stricter as one of the top concerns. With that said though, honestly, I think there is a point there somewhere. More spending, the United States weighing a record $1 billion loan for a lithium mine in Nevada, specifically Thacker Pass. The Biden administration and Lithium Americas Corp are negotiating terms of an agreement that would fund more than half of the cost for the Thacker Pass mine in Nevada. If this goes through, this would be the largest ever loan awarded to a mining company through the Department of Energy. This project has been pegged as one of the most promising opportunities in the United States. Clearly not a done deal, but would turn out to be a major deal when it comes to domesticating our US supply chain. If you go back, Lithium Americas has been trying for more than a decade to get production going at the Thacker Pass clay mine in Nevada. And GM would be loving this one if this project could finally get moving because they do have a hand in this deal. That's because GM invested $650 million in Lithium Americas to help it develop its Thacker Pass mine project, which holds enough battery metal to build 1 million EVs every year. Lithium Americas aims to extract lithium at Thacker Pass from a large clay deposit, something that has never been done before at commercial scale. Earlier this year, Lithium Americas said they plan to build several processing facilities at the site, including a plant to produce 3,000 tons per day of sulfuric acid used to extract lithium from the clay. You may be making the connection that Tesla is looking to do something similar, but without any acid. Tesla's supply for the next 5 to 10 years of everything is pretty much set. They've been many steps ahead for a long time. But we really need all of these deals to fall right for companies like Ford and GM to have a chance of making it through this transition without getting bailout money from the government. Speaking of, the UAW strikes are expanding today. This week though, Stellantis will be spared a further strike. GM and Ford, not so lucky. Stellantis was spared after last-minute concessions. The strike now expanding to Ford and GM assembly plants covering about 7,000 workers. Now, the total number of workers on the picket line is around 25,000, or roughly 17% of the union's 146,000 members at the Big Three. The UAW, though, still saving the best for last. This expanded strike is still avoiding pickup trucks. But this one will impact the Ford Explorer and the Lincoln Aviator SUVs, as well as a GM plant that makes the Chevy Traverse and the Buick Enclave. Fain said, despite our willingness to bargain, Ford and GM have refused to make meaningful progress. Contrary to what we heard last week about Ford making meaningful progress. The new crux of the situation this week, Ford said the two sides are close on wages and benefits, but Farley said the UAW's demands on the battery plant workers would have a devastating impact. Farley also warned suppliers are on a knife's edge as a result of the strike, and if it continues, as many as 500,000 supplier employees could be laid off. GM then said calling more strikes is just for the headlines, not real real progress. The progress Stellantis made was around cost of living allowance payments, as well as the right to strike over product commitments and plant closures. Fain said, "We are excited about this momentum at Stellantis and hope it continues." Ford typically makes about 5,700 vehicles every week at its Chicago plant, and GM's plant is around 3,600 cars per week. So, global data estimates the strike has cost Ford 8,000 vehicles in lost output, compared with 15.4 thousand for GM and 12.9 thousand for Stellantis. The longer this goes on, the lower inventory will be available at dealers in the months ahead, and even if demand stays the same, most likely the prices will go up as the dealers run out of inventory, which could lead to higher prices and then a slowdown further in demand.
And I've been there since 1995, and I went 12 years without a raise, and that was before 2009. And then we gave up everything in 2009 to help our companies survive. And it's all these years later, and it's time to just get a little bit back. We just want COLA back. We want a raise. We just want what's, our fair share.
We have pretty much lost domestic production in our country for small cars. It's gone forever. A bad deal would threaten now mid-size and much more expensive larger vehicles like Escape and Explorer. We'd have to choose to cut future investments in those products, restructure, and reduce our headcount throughout the company, including UAW workers. What's really frustrating is that I believe we could have reached a compromise on pay and benefits, but so far the UAW is holding the deal hostage over battery plants. Keep in mind, these battery plants don't exist yet. They're mostly joint ventures. They've not been organized by the UAW yet because the workers haven't been hired and won't be for many years to come. They won't scale until the next contract. And I need to be clear about one thing, because the UAW is scaring our workers by repeating something that just is factually not true. None of our workers today are going to lose their jobs due to our battery plants during this contract period or even beyond this contract. In fact, for the foreseeable future, we will have to hire more workers as some workers retire in order to keep up with the demand of our incredible new vehicles. Ford profit margins are thin and not at record levels. But we should all want strong profits because they would lead to record profit sharing and record investments in the future, in innovation and growth, and especially jobs. And I want to say a few words about EVs. They become a political football, and that's a shame. Tesla's become the most valuable auto company in the world has ever seen, and they're profitable, and they're growing. Our customers love their EVs. They are new to our brand, and they're going to be blown away at our next generation EVs.
I've also seen folks out there saying that none of the battery plants have anything to do with the UAW, but as far as I can tell, that is not true. We have this deal that happened earlier this year between the UAW and GM's Ultium plant. The UAW announced union workers at Ultium Cells, a joint venture between GM and LG, won a breakthrough agreement to immediately raise wages by $3 to $4 an hour, as well as back pay. Skipping to the bottom, workers at Ultium Cells won their union in a landslide vote 710 to 16 December of last year, becoming the first in the nation to successfully unionize at a large battery cell production plant. Honestly, it's a pretty tough spot because the UAW wants to loop in these future battery plants from companies like Ford, but Ford doesn't even have concrete plans, and I'm sure in the background does not want these plants to be unionized. Then when you layer in any IRA credit uncertainty and foreign entities of concern, it's just such a convoluted, confusing situation, so we'll see what happens.
Finally, how are GM and Ford going to compete? They already have a $65 an hour labor cost, where Tesla's is $45 to $50. Will they be successful in bringing Tesla's up? Because otherwise, their cost is about to go even higher.
We think their costs will increase. This is naturally going to happen, not only across Tesla, but probably across the transplant OEMs. I think this is naturally the case. Can they unionize? We've noted in the past it's been a tougher effort by the UAW, but and that in part has been because Tesla has benefited from paying its employees with stock comp. With the stock now where it is, that may not be the same types of benefits in the future. So wages are going to go up at Tesla.
As I said on X though earlier today, I'm not so sure I agree with Mr. Levy from Barclays. Hope you guys have a wonderful and a safe weekend. Please like the video if you did. You can find me on X, linked below. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.